Hey, this is the Kubeflow Notebooks meeting for the 25th of September, 2025. We're getting close to KubeCon, so reminder in a couple of, I think it's like 6 weeks or something, maybe a bit less. Like KubeCon NA is 10th of November in Atlanta, Georgia, US. So reminder if you're there, going. Um, cool. As always, I'd like to introduce the Notebooks 2.0 if you haven't seen it before. It's the very basic overview is in this issue, 85. It's a full rewrite of notebooks. It's much more. There's many motivations, but it's now no longer a wrapper around pod spec, and it's going to have CRDs for different kinds or types of what we call workspaces now, rather than just notebooks. And yeah, it's coming along. So if you want to read more about it, read about it here. There's a design doc that help explain why it was created. There's a roadmap here, just to give a little bit more context, but we're still working on making that a bit more in the GitHub, which makes it a bit easier, which again will be in this tracking board as a result. Well, the roadmap is a bit more user story focused. In this case, we should probably figure out that later. It'll probably be more in the GitHub issues long term rather than or maybe in a README in the GitHub. The adopters file, if you use notebooks or Kubeflow overall, add yourself to the various adopters files. I think most of the people here have been here for a while, so if anyone wants this, is anyone new here today? I don't know, actually. There's mostly just maintainers here. So I think we're good. If anyone wants to, feel free to raise your hand or message. Okay, so dashboard stuff. I don't know what the exact status of this one was. Andy, do we know?
Yes, so Julius did merge 135. I was talking with him briefly this morning. He's cool with me trying to cut although I don't know if I'll run into any permission issues, probably shouldn't, cut a release branch like a 2.0 alpha just to kind of continue like pipe cleaning.
On a
I'm
different repo or on this repo?
on this repo. Um,
So if you cut a branch, just cut a 2.0 branch and then cut an alpha from there, if you know what I mean. But yeah,
yes, yes. Um, So yeah, it'll probably be, I'm behind on reviews on a slew of other things. So I told him like Monday, my best guess is to actually go through that. I want to get some, various other things reviewed and in good standing.
yeah, let's do that on a call together, maybe. You know what I mean? Like it's
Okay.
because like it's so we both know what's happening on it, so that like yeah, I
Yep, that
mean
sounds good.
yeah,
I'll reach out to you early next week and then we can just ad hoc figure out the right time to do it. I did do some stuff locally, so like I feel like the script works, but then to make it work on my fork, I was gonna have to change a bunch of crap, which kind of invalidates pipe cleaning to begin with. But I did see the failures I was getting on my fork was it was trying to pull images that didn't exist yet because we hadn't actually published from the upstream on those branches, which is what I would have the errors I would have expected, right? So the manifest got updated. They were referring to images that didn't exist.
and to be clear, all the releasing workflows exist, right? Not just the pull request
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
flows.
Everything exists now, but like it exists on Kubeflow dashboard. I was trying to run on my Andy at Miami Kubeflow notebooks, and so it was like a weird hybrid thing that was never going to work. But I saw the errors I would expect it to have seen that make me think that it was doing what it was supposed to be doing.
Okay, yeah. Cool. So it looks like they do trigger on this. Okay, cool. And I guess all the releasing stuff we need to look through anyway. Cool. Awesome. Sounds good. So the next steps there, I guess, are to cut a release and then
Yeah, cut an
make
alpha release to see if that works, and if we get, maybe there's a small fix here or there. I don't think anything
try
will be
deploying
fundamentally
from it.
broken.
Yeah.
And then that can be just then we can roll that into a proper release after that.
And then yeah, the next step after that would be to go to taking stuff out of manifests that are not specific to the whole of Kubeflow. Things like how auth is done is completely specific to the distribution, and I'd like to pull it into here. I think we have the support of every kind of the main parts of Kubeflow there. So, and it would be helpful for us too, because it means that when we're doing it, we can then depend on the dashboard repo rather than the manifest repo. As for notebooks, I mean, and so other components can as well. But again, this is kind of where I was saying I think the future of every component is they offer two versions, or three potentially. One which is completely standalone from Kubeflow, one which is, if that makes sense at all for the project, like if it's if it's like a controller, like trainer or something, which doesn't have auth. Um, then the second one is Kubeflow with official dash, like with upstream dashboard version, and then Kubeflow with no dependency on Istio and upstream auth. Just inject your auth in specify way here, if you know what I mean. And then and here's the pieces you'll need to swap out. So that's because we're going to be doing that naturally with Kubeflow notebooks, but with other components, it'll just make it more explicit that the contract is to be part of Kubeflow. You have to do the first two. You don't have to do the third one, which is no Kubeflow, obviously. But uh, if you want to be able to be part of every distribution, then yes, you need to be able to do the last one because auth is not part of Kubeflow. You know what I mean? That's the idea. Okay, cool. Anyone else got anything they want to say about dashboard? If not, we should probably make a dashboard page. Sorry, sorry, no, like we did. We did. This is probably something we should do, but not straight away. But document how the heck dashboard works, especially once it starts being more of a contractually formalized thing. Like what does it mean to pull the namespace from it and things like that? Because it's just very confusing right now. And we can replace a lot of the README in there with that and put it on the Kubeflow website. Cool. Yeah. Moving on. Okay, Notebooks 1.0. So that's a separate PR. But then what is the I guess what is our next steps here to get a release from this repo?
As I said, the Israeli team is doing a lot of the heavy lifting right now. They have 3 or 4 of the, like all of the CI, like the unit integration and multi-arc tests, all those issues have been written up and assigned. As of yesterday, 3 of the PRs had been raised and I'd reviewed them. So I was waiting for follow-up and feedback on them. I will look tomorrow to see where there's at. And then, like I said, a lot of the Israeli devs are out through like October 14th. So, but some of them intermittent. So as stuff gets raised, I'll review and check. I'm hoping with the 3 reviews I did, there were some common mistakes being made, like still referring to a master branch that doesn't, exist for us. It's main. And so I'm hoping with those reviews that'll keep the quality of subsequent ones up and better. One of the developers on one of the PRs raised, Yehudit, was running into some weird issues that seemed to be like QEMU, like building for, I think it was ARM, was like timing out, but was not seeing those issues on some of the other PRs that got raised. So I was going to dive into that more tomorrow to try to figure out what's going on there. It's kind of
Oh, if it's
confusing.
the notebook images one, maybe. Was it notebook
It's
images?
it's not notebook images though. I forget which component it is, but it's not like the example server images. So I just need to dig in more to understand what's going on there.
There was
So
definitely a bug in certain QEMU versions, which I was pinning very specifically on the old repo. So if they just like pulled from a random one, I don't know. They might have accidentally not.
yeah, I haven't even tried to reproduce it yet. She had commented on there that she was having issues, so I'll have a better feel for that tomorrow.
Yeah, because
Um,
the way that the problem is QEMU's default GitHub action caches in an artifact, and if that artifact has, I don't know, is just really old. There's so many versions of QEMU that are incompatible with the latest versions of Ubuntu. So and just don't work. As a result, I remember the day when that happened, when every GitHub issue in the whole GitHub runner in the whole world stopped working. It was a great day. The every GitHub Docker build. So that that might be what's happening there. Although we should look into using the official ARM builders at some point anyway, especially mainly. I don't really care about it for the normal ones. They're probably not that big. But for the notebook images, we probably should. Like it's so much faster if we build with not emulation. The big issue we ran into, which we were talking about, is how to combine artifacts. You have to effectively build up in a single artifact that you push at the same time. Because if you're building on x86, if you're building the PowerPC and well, we don't build notebook images for PowerPC, but like the example ones. I mean, if you're building x86 on x86 and you're building ARM on ARM, you have 2 different servers doing the builds, and therefore you can't easily push to the same hash. You need to actually do some mangling to combine the artifact metadata and then make a single tag that has 3 it's not difficult. It's just not a well-trodden path because
Yeah, did back in my IBM days when we started getting serious about mult. That's ended up what we do it. So we would have uniquely tagged like SHAs, but then would like basically use build X to like programmatically create a manifest
yeah,
list
effectively you push the
from that.
SHAs. You effectively both need to push the SHAs without a tag. And then another step at the end needs to say, do both SHAs exist? If yes, create a new tag with this. But then that
Yes.
now breaks the lineage and SBOM stuff that we're also, you know what I mean? So like, it's
Yeah.
just like, it's because GitHub's only been offering for free ARM runners for a very short period of time. This is a pretty untrodden path. Also, to be clear, the ARM runners are not very big. So don't get the idea that anyone could be able to actually run any testing on ARM there. It's mainly just going to be no emulated building, which is great, but you know, they're like the ARM cores are not very fast, and they're like 4 cores or something. So anyway, cool.
But yeah, so there's stuff here, and then Liav is kind of intermittently in and out around holiday time, but he was going to work on fleshing out, writing up the deploy tasks and some of the other things to make sure that all of the release 111 has actually tasks written up. We have all the features there, but some of the features are just missing the individual implementation tasks. But we have an internal doc that we kind of, worked up on. So it's just getting that transferred into GitHub. And Liav said he'd work on that early next week as well. So that full plan will be available in GitHub.
So for the 1.0 branch, have we actually got tests correctly running right now?
Well, no, those are the PRs to like
Okay.
add them. So there's at least, like I said, at least 3 PRs open to add.
Cool. 'Cause we just need to make sure that tests are and obviously so that when people are raising PRs that we can actually run them.
Yes.
And then obviously we should pull in our tests now from, I don't know if we do some tests that I think do need the dashboard. So maybe we could, you know what I mean, pull from the new dashboard repo once that's got it. Well, that has to have a release. Cool. Anything else we want to add there or blockers that we can move on?
We
Okay.
at some point, Matthew, it's probably just a quick like kind of rubber stamping, but we do have those architectural issues just to like I think get you to kind of sign off on like yes, we're removing common, yes, we're publishing to Kubeflow, and then some word on what we want to do with example server images. Are we leaving them in the notebooks v1 branch versus splitting out into a repo? And are we continuing to push to the existing registry because it's painful otherwise? So just to kind of like
So to
get
be
that.
clear, when we're talking about container images, I think we'll be talking about just all of them, or are we talking about only
Well, I think we were carving out to say we could decide to do something different with example notebook servers. So we could have, those are two, they don't have to be, but I treat them as 2 separate discussions right now. They might have the same answer, but I think they're warranted to, individually appraise them.
Mm-hmm. Cool. But I guess this flow is still pretty correct,
Yes.
which
And,
is,
and yeah, the GitHub issues that we're wanting to write up very much like mirror that. Maybe the order's slightly different, but yes.
yeah. So like, but yeah, making sure that if we do use the existing ones, we need to remove the ability of the other repo to push to them, which I will do quickly. And also we should remove the code from main, but of course that won't remove it from the old release branches. So if you make commits there, it will still accidentally do it, which is why we need to remove the ability for the repo itself to push. Okay, cool. Anything else for 1.0?
No, sir.
Cool. Obviously the graduation stuff, we're not really blocking it right now, but we should still start going through some of these CVs. I think we should probably set up a meeting for that at some point. That are raised in the automated system. Oh wait, we need to merge that PR. We'll probably do that today anyway. So cool. Yeah. And so we'll set up a security reviewing group. So if you're we need to think about how the flow works to get on that team. Of course, traditionally you need to be a maintainer. We have a couple of people we've identified already. I won't list them out here, but so we'll have that. But so just it's a thing to be aware of that if you are a security researcher and interested in being a part of it, that's something we can talk about. Okay, let's. So notebooks 2.0. Before I go into like the way I'm kind of at the moment, while we lack nice planning stuff, every time we do notebooks 2.0, I'm gonna be identifying specific work streams that are the top priority. And when I say top priority, I mean like literally nothing else matters. If you're not working on something that's directly connected to one of these, stop working on what you're working on. If you don't have a task as a result of that, let's work on that. So the goal here should be that these things directly have outcomes. And so in this particular case, the top priority right now, and not everyone needs to contribute to each priority. You just need to contribute to one of them. Is the top priority right now is having end-to-end deployable notebooks 2.0. Doesn't mean it works. It just means that when I show a demo, I can actually show it being used on any Kubernetes cluster in the world. And it will be able to be used by people to check on the progress of the project as we develop. Notably, so yeah, it's not going to work perfectly at first, but once we've pipe cleaned that, we can then show it at a community meeting. We can do a demo at the Kubeflow booth at KubeCon, even if it's not perfect. We can pipe clean specific things. So that will be the next priority in this category afterwards, which is, okay, let's do some user flow, manual demo, click, these series of events. I'll review that. So the outcome is these, have manifest for front-end, back-end controller, have published container images for each commit, which is automated. What we mean by that, and have a wiki page for how to deploy notebooks 2.0. We're not going to go through those other steps right now. After that, obviously, it's about upgrading the release guide to use the dashboard one, which we talked about before, migrating also those auth things into dashboards so that we're not pulling from manifest. Now, the second priority at the moment is making sure that workspace-related front-end pages are ready for review and connected to back-end Ver client. Obviously, this is required for anything demo-wise to even happen. So this is obviously something everyone's been working on, so it's good. But let's make sure that you're focusing on this stuff. So like, for example, things related to workspace kind, they're not a priority right now. Things related to workspaces are. So making sure that the user actions for these kind of pages and sections are. So, okay, I forgot this first line. The first line is important, which is that in general, we should be mocking things in the real backend. So even if there is not an API yet for you to call, you should be demanding that the backend people make an API for you to call it if you're in the front end and there's not an API yet. And what that means is that because we're generating the client for the backend by using automated client generation through Swagger, all it needs is for someone in the backend team to get a new API path or structure change, which then is reflected in the Swagger, which then the front end can regenerate from, and then we can know up on those things in the back end. It's important so that we agree on the contract between the front end and the back end, and also just so that people who have visibility to the controller, because the front end doesn't, can push back on proposed paths or things that just don't make sense. So that because the front end might kind of, if it can't become disconnected from the actual realities of the project. So these are the main pages. We need to make sure that, so for example, icons. We should not be hard coding random paths. We should be asking the backend to tell me the path of the icon that I should in the future be referencing, even if that path right now is just a hard coded thing that the backend serves. Then, because the backend is actually called by the user, I want to highlight that as well. So any path that's accessible in the backend is accessible to the browser that the user is using. So you can easily serve an icon there, and that's how we'll be serving the icons that the admin provides. We should be making sure we get the correct connection paths for when you do click the connect to a notebook. So this is under the list workspaces page. Now, under this one, these are the two ones which are going to need a bit of work, which is they're going to need some backend mocks as well, which is I want to pipe clean these during the creation and updating of a workspace. I want to pipe clean the creation and updating of volumes and mounting them and what it means to say like, okay, 5 notebooks are all trying to mount a read only once volume in this namespace. What does the user see? I think the user should probably see something that warns them about what that means for them, all things like that. Similarly, of course, it's not always a mistake, by the way, because you can run multiple pods on the same server, and the same server with a read only once is a read only once means read only once node. So if you're not using exclusive node allocation, which is hard to do in Kubernetes to begin with, it's actually valid to have 10 notebooks mounting the same PVC. That's read only once, because that read only once could be an NVMe. That's like the primary case of a read only once is a local storage. Cool. And obviously for AI and data, local RAID is like required effectively. So that's normal. Okay. Updating secrets. This is really important. This is a big improvement from Notebooks v1. So I want to be able to demo this soon, which is how do I not store my database credentials in my notebook pod or my code? So this answer to this is you should be able to create a secret in Kubernetes. Now this creates a whole bunch of questions around that. This is why I want to pipe clean it, which is like what you probably shouldn't allow them to see every secret in the namespace. Of course, if they have admin, they'll be able to see them anyway. But what I mean is, so in the back, as long as this is why we want to force the front end to talk to a back end to do these pieces, because the back end needs to then decide some of these decisions, like for creating, updating, listing, mounting, and similarly in the update and workspace flow. Now, the create workspace flow, we've already got a lot of work done here, but I think some of the steps are still either hard-coded or not connected directly to the backend. I think there'll be a lot of interesting things that come out of trying to connect it. For example, there was some strange stuff going on with like adding the ability to add labels, which obviously we're not going to do because that's a big security risk. Users can only add labels that are approved or something, but that's what I'm saying. So the backend needs to, if the front end wants to add the ability to add specific labels, and this was just a random case. Of course, I know that what happened there, is that the backend it's not a mock, reality actually did have a label field. So I understand how the front end people were like, oh, I want to set that. But it was actually a mistake. That should never have been in the front end, because it just, I was thinking about trying to replicate the feature of the pod defaults of Notebooks 1.0, but obviously it's such a nightmare to actually make that secure, because the front end would then need to reject all invalid labels that you try and suggest. The backend could do it, sorry. But anyway, because any user can just, because again, the backend is exposed to the user's browser. So I can post directly to any backend API that the front end is calling, which is expected. That's secure. It just means that we need to deal with the fact that validation has to happen at the backend. Okay, and then I want fake pages for logs and events. I think these two, because these features this is required for feature parity with Notebooks 1.0. So there are pages that we saw mockups for this previously, but we should be calling the mocked backend APIs. And so this one's going to be hard. And I'm going to need help from the front end people to suggest what they think a good, is it a WebSocket? Is it a polling based approach with a delta from the last poll time in like a query parameter? Anyway, so getting an agreement on this API structure and having discussions with the backend people as to what is possible. You know, we don't want to DDoS the Kubernetes backend and things like the Kubernetes itself when we're pulling events and logs, but we do need to provide the ability to see pod logs and pod events and stateful set and other events, and events that we raise as well in the workspaces, in the UI, because that's feature parity. And obviously, as I think we kind of said this before here, which, you know, all API interactions use the backend. So yeah, these are the main flows: create workspace, update workspace, similar to reopening a create like flow with the certain immutable fields not visible. You know, changing pod config, changing image config, mounting, unmounting volume, mounting, unmounting secrets. Again, also creating inline a secret, being like, hey, I've got a new database credential. I want to create a new secret, or add it. So there's also one other, by the way, option here, which I forgot to mention, which is I don't like it, but should we only like have a notebook secrets which stores all secrets? Might be problematic. Okay. Yep. And then last, before I answer your question, idea, I just want to go to the last ones, which is, this is really important. It's different to update, which is controller will show in status that there are admin defined redirects for pod image configs, but the front end needs to apply them. So this one is that we need to present a user with a warning that there is an update when under the conditions that we've talked about, on restart, on pause, on start, and just as a warning icon in the UI. When they do apply it, they need to see a list of the things that are applicable. We can debate what that is, and that's a great thing to pipe clean with the front-end UX people, is should we allow people to partially apply updates? Should we only allow them to apply to the full set of updates? Things like that. How often do we nag them? Do we make that configurable? And so getting that page, that's a great piece of work for someone, I think, where we can even do some user research there. But again, especially once it's deployable. And so that means that the front end needs to, we need to think, is there a backend API specifically for this? Probably not. It's probably just going to be the update one, because that just seems to make sense. Now restarting, similarly, this is connected to the above flow, but users need to be able to restart their notebooks. It's kind of complicated because there's only a true false pause flag. So what does that mean from a backend and front end perspective? Start and stop, that's pretty straightforward. That's just about pipe cleaning to make sure that we say, hey, you're about to stop. Anything in memory will be lost. Whatever the normal warnings are. Then the show details. This is the page we talked about before, which includes the logs and events, which is I click on a specific workspace in the table. This is where those API calls will be expected. Of course, we've debated whether we do a flyover or whether we do it as a expandable tab or something, who knows? But this is why we need to pipe clean that. Then the last one, Priority. Sorry, any questions about Priority 2? Probably. Yes, probably Andy.
Not really a question, but I just wanted to call it. I'm glad that Kyle Walker is here on the community call, because Kyle, we should definitely talk more about this. I think that overview Matthew just did is a good thing to figure out how we can get engaged and where you or someone on your team can contribute, because this gives us a good kind of prioritized list of focus areas.
I will note that I did not list workspace kinds once here. So if you're working on them, please stop. If you know what I mean. So focus all efforts on workspaces only, because in the short term, workspace kinds can be completely managed through CLI, and will be for the demos. Of course, don't delete work that you've done. Raise a PR if you're really close to finished, but the only part that matters right now from a front end to integration to backend perspective is the workspace. Of course, there will be some changes to workspace kind on the controller to enable disabling of an existing feature for updates, but that's not relevant to the front end. So cool. Anyone, Kyle?
Yeah. So I just wanted to respond to Andy. Andy sent me this earlier this week, and I finally got a chance to look at it, half an hour before this call. I think I'm pretty sure we have designs from a UX standpoint for the vast majority of this, if
Yep.
not all of it. We just kind of have to put those together in a place, or there might be some minor things to do here and there. So I'm hoping, excuse me, to be able to work on that the next week. I'm hoping Tal will be able to work on that over the next week before he's out for a month. And then hopefully we'll at least have a list, and then we can know what work there is from a UX standpoint and figure out how to plan for that and make sure we're getting it done.
So when you say designs, do you mean like mockups, or what do you mean?
Yeah, so I mean, what we've been doing so far is pretty lo-fi, just kind of like this is where things go, and then working with the engineers as they're implementing to make sure that it makes sense, and that there's any questions, we work back and forth with them.
Cool. Yes. I mean, however you guys want to do mockups, that's fine. Whatever happens though, we need to underlyingly, like the pipe clean I'm trying to do here is making sure that obviously the design is like, I kind of want to get these flow pages, like just messed up versions of these flows into the pages, which some of them already exist, and calling through automatically generated API calls. And then obviously I would love to do iterations with people like yourself on each flow, being like, hey, here's some ideas for what we could do, and then we can workshop it from how feasible is this from a back-end perspective, because it's almost impossible for you front-end people to know what's possible and not, just because or time, what's going to take the most time as well. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's deceptive as to how long a back-end API might take to create. Of course, those can be resourced differently as well, but so I'd say it's going to be very difficult to do some mockups without. Yeah, I mean, it's almost like part of the mockup is the API. You know what I mean? Like it's like the front end, you like kind of almost in a note underneath the step being like, hey, here's what I would expect the API call to kind of look like. Of course, it's going to be automatically generated from the back end, but I don't know. It's just something, I don't know. I'm not quite sure how to connect those two together, but I guess as long as we have current state for some of these, we even have list workspace table that already exists actually on the current. It's not always connected to the what about that one? Okay. It's not always connected to the backend, but so yeah, connect to workspace. I forgot about that one, which is we need to show the connect in the table. Cool. Awesome. If you need any immediate pointers, let's try. I want to unblock. We can do lots at once, if you know what I mean. So so we should spike into specific ones. So I'd say rather than trying to design everything all at once, unless we have more resource than I think we have, we should pipe clean the core flow, which will probably be creating workspaces. if you know what I mean. Like that's probably, and that includes some of the new parts that we're just talking about here, which are critical for, because people seeing that is one of the reasons why, that's how we'll get people on board, because the volumes and secrets doesn't even exist in Notebooks 1. Volumes is just messed up though. So like as a result, showing on a demo being like, hey, volumes are now not messed up is going to be an amazing demo for the project. And then secrets are like, hey, you didn't even think about this, but you were storing secrets before, or you had to do it in some other way. Here's a better way to do it now. You know, and it's just, it's like it's a win to be like, hey, oh, I want to contribute to that, or I'm, you know, a vendor and I, you know, whatever, right? You know, these kind of, and so I think, so from your perspective, I would love your feedback on user story research there, you know what I mean? And like, so what, like, I'm sure you've talked to users, I know you have, but like the, and then from there we can be like, hey, here's a wish list. You know, the user would love templated secrets, for example, or validating that the API key that they provide actually works, for example. And it's like, okay, absolutely, I love that idea. That's an amazing feature, you know what I mean? But it's like, how does the backend do that? You know what I mean? And then but then it could be prioritized as a, and we can create a roadmap, you know what I mean? It's like, and or we could even just mock it up, right, in the short term, you know what I mean? And like, and that's where I'm coming back to like, hey, because you can imagine amazing features, and creating that roadmap helps us assign the right resource to the backend once, because I don't want to end up in a situation where it comes to the November, whatever, and we've shipped a working Notebooks 2.0 thing, and the front end people are like rolling off the project because they don't have obvious tasks to work on. You know what I mean? Or something. I don't know. It's like something like that. Anyway, thank you, Kyle. Sorry, I talked a bit too much there.
Sure thing.
Any other questions for about priority 2, which is making sure that the front end connects to the back end for workspace flows, and that we pipe clean them? Any more questions about priority 2? Okay. Last priority is another critical one, which is, I haven't listed it as much, but because it's really only Hashad working on it right now, and me and Andy indirectly sometimes, which is that for the, we talked at the very beginning of the meeting, I'll just recap in case people are watching a clip. The 3 modes of any Kubeflow component, Kubeflow being an ecosystem of multiple components, are standalone. We don't support that in Kubeflow notebooks, meaning we are more than just a controller. So you cannot just kubectl apply a notebook controller. It doesn't make sense. So that doesn't apply to us. The second one is Kubeflow component, in our case, notebooks, with the official reference, if you will, not official, reference, auth, Istio, and auth2proxy, DEX, all this stuff out of the dashboard repo. So that's the one that this priority is related to. The last one is required for vendors, which I'll just say the third option as well, which is the Kubeflow component with no auth and no dependency on Istio specifically, with an expectation that the distribution of the component will modify the component to inject their own auth and or network routing. Of course, we've talked about ways to do that, including using the new HTTP route rather than virtual service and things like that, so that you can hook into the more generic Kubernetes APIs. But of course, the first priority before any of that support happens is to get it working with the actual deployment option, which has to exist for Kubeflow components, which is connection to the dashboard. So what that means is that right now, the controller does not currently create a virtual service. Virtual service obviously being required to route from the user's browser into the workspace. So I know that there's a lot of work going here. I'm sure we'll end up talking a little bit about it after the call and also maybe on here. I want to move on though. Any other questions about priority 3 or things that you think we're not prioritizing right now that you disagree with, or just disagree with anything, please raise it. There's no, I don't want, if someone disagrees, like I feel very strongly that these are the only priorities right now. If you feel differently about that, I want to hear it because I want to know why.
I don't strongly disagree with anything here, but I just wanted to add some color on me and Charles, who had a conflict today. He's not on. We are taking a stab at getting a secrets API proposal up, Matthew. So I'm hoping next week we can iterate on that. Once me and him feel good on, like, we have a general shape of things, we feel good presenting, we will pivot to the storage classes and volumes and do that similarly. So there's, but getting the secrets one laid down first, I think it's easier because storage classes and volumes, there's a lot of weird interplays and stuff that take more time. But we are looking at those to look to have proposals. Like I said, I would anticipate secrets will definitely be ready by the time we meet next week. Storage classes, maybe, if not certainly the week after, but the hope would be like a kind of API proposal, Google Doc or something we can review. Once we feel good about the shape of that within the community, then we, creating the stub of that will be easy. So I'm hoping we'll be at a point that we can review that secrets one next week.
Cool. Okay. So I guess let's go. So what I want to do now is go through these priorities and understand who's working on them. So and what everyone is doing to contribute to it. There's some stuff I would love to go over here, but this is more for notebooks 2.1. So we'll just skip over this for now. But if you want to read through it on your own time, the very brief summary is that as rack scale systems become the only systems people want to use, notebooks are going to need to change very dramatically. And so as a result, we're going to need to provide abstractions to connect to compute cluster resources from a notebook, where effectively the notebook becomes a login node, similarly to a Slurm login node. Of course, one of the options for external connection actually is Slurm itself, so which may or may not be running on the cluster. We're not going to do that running. But think about it as people want to use Ray, people want to use Slurm, people want to use MPI, people want to use Spark. They should be able to do that interactively from notebooks. And I think the proposal I've made here might work. Absolutely early though. I just wanted to highlight that this is a thing that if we want to, as HPC converges with Kubernetes a bit, like high performance computing has been very separate from Kubernetes for a long time. That has now changed with NVIDIA's latest products, and likely the vast majority of the HPC compute in the world will run Kubernetes. But right now, Kubernetes is not well suited for this kind of interactive development workload, which is why notebooks is very important. And so yes, if you want to provide feedback or have ideas here, or I'd love to hear more about it, but talk about that later. So in terms of people who are working on things, feel free to, when we go through each person here, if you have something else you want to raise, you feel free to raise it. But generally, this is kind of a stand-up as it relates to what were you working on this week and what you plan to work on next week. Are you blocked by anything? And do you have a task? Obviously, most important question. But specifically frame it, please, in the context of the priorities. Like, I'm working on priority 1, and I've done these things this week, and I plan to do these things next week, and I'm blocked by this. So, and if the answer is that you don't have something related to one of the priorities, then we're going to find something for you to do. Or if you don't have time, obviously we'll say, come back next week. So, and obviously if you work on other parts of Kubeflow, that's fine. I don't particularly care. It's cool. I'd say that's just saying I don't have time. That's you can put it as overall Kubeflow stuff, but so yeah. I'll start with Andy just because Andy is, I know, always prepared, so he can give an example of what it means.
Yeah, so the top priority, I ended up having enough time this week. I feel like we have everything laid out there. So starting at the top, I just have the PR link. So 596 was some common manifest changes to controller. We did briefly discuss this last week, Matthew. You had a couple points that I got addressed there, so I feel like the manifests look good. 605, 610, and 611 are then the published workflows for controller, backend, and front end. I did have those running and included that evidence on the PR reviews from running them on my fork. Those will create SHA-tagged commits as well as release commits if it happens on a release branch. And then the final link under the deploying there is my first stab at a wiki document. I can clean up the wording. I stopped kind of adding context around steps just to make sure I got the steps right. But this scrolls a bunch, but it'll get all the way down to the bottom that actually has you just for now using kubectl because I didn't want to put screenshots in here quite yet. you know, getting everything set up. So I followed these. I ran each of these commands individually as I was working on this. So I know this works, and this leads me to have a central dashboard deployment that has a workspace kind and a workspace built off of images that were published from my fork, even though here these commands that I've given are actually pointing to Kubeflow notebooks repo. So I haven't ran them yet because obviously those PRs aren't merged, but I did try to like translate that. And once we get them all merged, I'll rerun through this to make sure it's there. And that's just kind of where we can obviously iterate on that. I don't think this is the final form of that, but this is just an opinionated take on how it could be done. The other thing that I'll call out on that wiki, the one thing that you had asked for that I wasn't able to work out, I think it's because I'm running on a kind cluster. I could not get HTTPS to work. And there was a bunch of confusing and conflicting information I was reading about due to namespace networks and kind running in Docker that maybe, or, you know, I was running in Podman that maybe my Mac OS is causing issues, but it would just like not work. And I included errors there on that. So it's the document right now only works with HTTP. But if someone else can figure out those gaps, or if it works on Docker on like a Linux based machine, cool, I'll happily update those steps, but I'm kind of restricted by what I can do. And then the only other thing is, again, we had kind of a pre-review on Trivi, Matthew, and you were right on the money with the ref and SHA, or whatever those two attributes were. And so I was able to run that on my fork with some changes that we discussed, and now that branch name and the branch filter do actually work. So I think we're good to get that merged now with the main problem that you had, rightly so, around not being able to filter on branches being resolved.
Technically, this is kind of like not one of the priorities, but like it is a priority in the sense of it's just something. It's like some tasks just sit outside of it, but they'll be assigned directly to you by me. So that's just kind of where those come from. So in this particular case, Trivi is about security scanning for both notebooks 1.0 and 2.0 to meet our obligations to the things. So yeah. Also, I do need to highlight that it's related to security. I forgot about this. We do need to review the security audit results for notebooks, I believe, from the security audit. So maybe we should, I believe Edo should have access to that. I don't know if he does. But okay, cool. So are you blocked by anything? I guess we know what you're working on. You're going to be working on helping facilitate the rest of the committers on some of those other priorities. Is there anything?
Yeah, so yeah, in terms of what I plan to work on in the next 2 weeks, not blocked by anything other than time. Like I said, cleaning up working group notes to get stuff in the projects board is always kind of a stretch goal that I never seem to have time for, but hopefully we can. But yeah, Harshad's Istio stuff and secrets, volumes, proposals, definitely top of mind.
Cool. I see Jenny wrote something, so.
Yep. Hello. So yeah, currently working on that task there to align the theming styles with the shared library integration after the merge. There have been some conflicts that have been flagged. So I'm working on that on the shared library side, but once those fixes go in, that's going to knock out a bunch of those sub issues within that feature ticket there. So yep.
Do you mean priority 2, by the way? Or 1?
I guess if 1 is incorporating it with the central dashboard integration, is 2 more aligned with front end priorities?
So 1 is just being able to deploy it. So like styling, I don't think fits under priority 1 or it kind of doesn't fit under 2 either, but it's definitely important. Like this is an interesting question, right? So what is it, right? So being able to yeah, it's hard to know, right? It does feel a little bit not aligned with any of these, but like it's important. Like I'm not saying it's not important, but I'm trying to, this is like a primary example of question like around, okay, so things you have time to do. Obviously, what does it mean, right? So like you're integrating with the common dashboard, common libraries that were there. So what are you changing from what we're currently doing?
So currently we have that shared style sheet that's coming and getting imported. So that there's some changes that need to be made to that imported style sheet in order to fix the styles that are coming in here and also on the model registry side too.
So how long, where does it, so the style lives in that common registry? Repo, sorry? Common,
the shared library, yeah, that's getting incorporated into both of those repos.
Is it one of those, how much is shared? Like, so is it like how significant of a change? Like it's, like I guess the question is, do we just have a copy of the style sheet in our own repo right now? Is that what's happening?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, cool. Well, it's a good thing. I'd say this is important, but it's not technically either. You know what I mean? It's like like integration with common model. What's it called? MUI
Yes, that's right.
theme. Cool. Are you working on anything related to helping with the priority 2 front end work? So relating to making sure that we have front end flows for these core workflows and connecting them to the back end, and or styling from a styling or other perspective. You know, I don't know what perspective. I think there were some people talking about mockups and other things. Like I feel like you'd be able to, because you've got a lot of experience with the components. I feel like you'd be able to provide feedback being like, hey, that component already exists. We could just use that. You know what I mean? Or something to that, like speeding up that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. Not at the moment, but I anticipate I might be pulled on into those discussions going forward in the future.
That's actually a really good thing. So are you the reference point for every component that exists? Like, you know what I mean? Are you really good at, do you know all those things off your head?
It's not just me. I guess it takes a village. So Kyle and some of the folks in the design space will also, we'll know these things as well. But yeah,
Because like I feel like a good point I want to make here is when we're doing this priority 2, part of it will be it's about speed, right? It's about trying to get things in. And so if there is a great component that already exists, maybe we should bend the way the UI functions towards that. If you know what I'm saying. So like if
we do this already, Matthew, based on the pattern fly. So we have most of the components on the pattern fly, and now it started by the Kyle designs, and then Jenny work. It's all based on the pattern fly standard. So I basically replicated the components that already exist.
Of course, the converse is also true, which is that for the priority features, it's likely that there isn't a component that exists, but those primitives like tables and other things.
It's most of the times it's a combination of the components that already exist that we build custom components on top of it.
And so cool. I was just saying, like, make sure that we use the resource of people who are familiar with those people like Jenny and others. Of course, not just Jenny, but you know, I think if you're here and have time and are working on things and are connected, in the same way that backend people can provide input or controller people can provide input on what's possible, you know what I mean? You can provide being like, hey, if you did it this way instead, it would not require a new component to be made, or something to that effect, right? Trying to get the minimum viable kind of, not minimum viable, but like first flow, and then absolutely we're going to iterate and build our own things, custom things, and do things that no one's ever seen before. But thank you for your, so were you blocked by anything in relation to that? Do you have any plans to work on that stuff over the next few weeks, or?
So at the moment, the priority is just make sure that we fix the styles so that everything looks good. And then, yeah, I'm happy to get pulled into any conversations that I'm needed in apart from that.
Cool. Anything else?
That's it for me. Thank you.
Editor.
Yeah, I can help with the security, but on the development side, I'm helping with the rest in KO more.
That's cool. Yep. So let's, we're going to probably merge the security scanning nightly thing for notebooks 1.0 and 2.0 today. So which means that there'll now be a lot of security things in the code scanning section of the GitHub repo, which you have access to. So we should, I think once we, I don't know what the flow to get through that initial bulk. The question is, how do we get through the initial bulk? You know what I mean? Like, are we gonna do like a session where, you know what I mean? Like we once a week we just try and burn through them, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, and if Andy and you agree, I think it'd be more valuable for my time to start by notebook 1.0.
Oh yeah, that's what I mean.
Due to the graduation. Yeah, due to the graduation.
Yeah,
if you can start by that.
Also, 1.0 is released, whereas 2.0 isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, absolutely. Of course, if you see something, well, if we see some, we should do a quick scan for serious issues in 2.0, just to make sure that there's nothing crazy. But if a 1.0, absolutely, yes.
I'm happy to assist with the front-end things on 1.0 because to let the team focus on 2.0.
Yeah, one thing just... Sorry, just to interject, one thing we're going to immediately run into a buzzsaw on is I just arbitrarily tried to pick one issue in Notebooks v2 that I saw flagged, but I'm sure it'll apply to Notebooks v1 as well. Like, you know, one of the solutions is like upgrade this library and go.mod to this version. in Notebooks 2, we're on Go 122.0 is what's pinned in Go.mod. I'm sure Notebooks 1 is much less than that. But the one, like I said, this is a small sample size, but the one dependency I was trying to upgrade to then required Go 123, right? Which then like changes, we probably should take it to Slack or whatever, but figure out what we want to do about like core Go updates.
Yeah.
To
Anyway,
get my-
we could.
Yeah,
let's-
and I just sent a patch for model rest to bump for 124.6 due to dependabot issues. Because the Kubernetes client they asked to update the Kubernetes client, and then we need to bump Go for it.
So yeah, so I think bump Go is going to be in Notebooks 1 and 2 going to be a prerequisite to solve
For the front end, will be the same for Node.js, because I assume that we have a package with some CV. They fix like 3 versions later, and they don't fix for the older versions. That's my biggest worry on this.
So I'd say that like those things are, yeah, absolutely. We're gonna have to patch a lot of things, but let's focus on going through the list and finding the ones that are actually serious. Like so, and then evaluating. Okay, because a lot of them are gonna be false. A lot of them are just gonna be wrong. Like they're gonna be like, oh, that package is imported, but it's a dev package. It's not even shipped. Like something. So like that's what we're trying to do.
I agree with the strategy, but I'm sure that will be this case.
There will be real ones, yes. Well, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. We should get the list. We should understand the scope of the problem we're working with, because spiking into a specific issue, we can then say, hey, these 50 issues are all related to this, which will all be updated in this group. You know what I mean? Like something like that. Like that's kind of, because obviously all ones that because any issue that we identify as an actual CVE for Kubeflow notebooks will be published as a CVE on the repo with a patched version. So
Yep.
so that's why I'd like, automatic scanning of a CVE, I treat it like an AI spam effectively. It's like, yep, it might be real, it might not be, it might have absolutely no relevance to the project whatsoever. So its CVE level might be 1 or 0, you know what I mean? So like, but for the ones that are actually 5 or above, we should be triaging and being like, okay,
Yep.
there's 20 of them in this, and figuring out the quick, like how we can take a hatchet to the number of ones that are we've identified as real as quick as possible. Of course, I don't want to spend needless time going into each issue. If it has, like, that seems like it would take forever, but like, but let's do that in a separate meeting. Okay, so cool.
Yep.
Awesome. And
I'm happy to help with the security as soon as I have the active report in this schedule this time.
yeah.
I have to drop to another call.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
See you.
Okay, who else has to drop soonest? I guess you go next, whoever that is. Kyle, maybe?
I do have to drop. I don't have anything on there other than what I already talked about.
Okay, cool. I guess let's make sure we get something. Awesome. Thank you for your work there. Okay. Adriel, Polo, maybe?
Hey, yeah, I'm still working on internal stuff for Red Hat, so no time to take on the priorities at the moment.
Cool. Okay. Not currently working on notebooks 2.0. Okay, so working with internal Red Hat teams, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle, on mockups for notebooks 2.0 flows.
Looks good.
Cool.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. Then how do you say your name? Sorry, Adriel. I'm sorry.
It's me. It's Adrian. Yeah, I'm not currently working on anything. I'm just here to unblock stuff.
Awesome. Is there anything you want to say?
No, nothing so far.
Awesome. Okay, cool. And who's the last person? It was Hashad.
Yeah, from my side, I think I'm working directly on the priority 3. I updated my pull request for 507, which changes the CRD. Andy gave me some reviews and I updated based on them. Let's take a look. today after this call, if possible.
Yeah, we'll do a PR review after this call. So anyone who has PRs that need reviewing or merging or elevated permissions or just overall community unblocking, please tell me. We'll probably go for the next 3 hours or so. We might take 1 or 2 breaks in the middle, but so anyone is welcome to stay or come and join again if they need. So I guess feel free to drop anyone who has a meeting right now, or stay on, or if you have a PR that you want us to review that you've raised, please message it in the chat. And if you think it's important related to one of the priorities. Is anyone in that situation where who they need to drop right now but have something they need reviewed? If not, then we'll just kick off with Andy and me and Hashad. So I guess of the currently open PRs, which ones should we do first, do we think, Andy?
Do you want to stop the
Oh
recording?
yeah, I probably should drop story, otherwise it'll go on for hours. The recording.
Yeah.
So thank you for everyone for watching and coming. Awesome. Exciting for the Notebooks 2.0. Let's try and get that demo.